How can you improve the chances of your architecture projects getting published? I'm Dave Sharp from Vanity Projects and I help architects with this sort of thing all the time. So this happens to clients all the time. They finish a new project, they get photos, they're really excited. They think of their favorite magazine they would love their project to be in, and then they email the editor, they send them the photos, and nothing happens, and then that's the end of it. I get a lot of clients in that situation and they ask me, how can I improve the chances? Now, media is complicated and I'm not a PR professional, but there's a few little things that I figured out along the way and tried with clients, and it's often ended up working pretty well. Clients will usually get published in a lot more places than they were expecting, and they end up getting a lot more traction on their project. These are the steps that I recommend. The first thing that you need is really good photos. Obviously, it has to be a good project and you have to have good photos. So hire a good photographer, particularly one who focuses on architecture, who could possibly introduce you to journalists and publications that they've given work to before. That would be my first move. The other thing that I would do would be spend a little bit extra to get some staging and some styling, just to make sure the photos really look the best that they possibly can. That might be a big problem with your clients, but trust me, I've had clients get emails back from publications going, we love the project, but we hate the furniture, so there's not much we can do with it. So to avoid ending up in that situation, do some staging and some styling. Work with professionals. That's what they're there for. Once you've got your photos, you want to start by picking more than one publication. Architects always seem to just pick Dezeen, or they just try and email Caitlin Butler at Houses. There's all kinds of publications out there, all over the world, reaching millions of people. Just go spread your wings a little bit. We usually pick 30, 40 publications. There's hundreds of architecture publications, and that's just in architecture. There's interior design publications, there's design, there's popular culture, there's the mainstream media, there's real estate, there's property, there's luxury, there's all kinds of different things. Even magazines like the Qantas In-Flight magazine. Not many people really consider how many potential clients are reading that magazine when they're thinking about who they should be reaching out to. We all just reach out to the same publications as each other. So broaden out your selection and pick a wider range of publications. The next step is to think about your story. I have a suspicion that a lot of the time architects just send a journalist an email saying, new house in Toorak by my firm, here's the photos. But that will work if your firm is very, very well known, because you have to think from a journalist perspective, new project by insert name of well-known architecture firm. That's going to get a lot of interest because that's a really well-known firm. But if your firm's normal or not particularly well-known, the photos can be really strong, but if it's a little borderline, a lot of the time the journalist might be thinking to themselves, well, is anybody going to click on this? Nobody really knows the name of that architect. So we can't just focus on the story being architecture firm brings out new project. We need to think about what we could do to help the journalist as far as how can we try and get more people to click on this. So we're trying to put ourselves in their shoes and think about their audience of maybe hundreds of thousands of website visitors a month and going, what's going to interest more of them? That way, if you're thinking like the journalist or thinking like whoever's running the platform, they're thinking more about, is this going to get traffic, or are we going to invest a lot of time into this and 300 people are going to read it? We want tens of thousands of people to read it. So I usually try to think about stories from the perspective of where could they engage a potential audience on a publication? Let's worry about that first and sort of slip our agenda and our narrative in there, but really we just want to get exposure through the media. So let's try and help the journalist and try and give them a big story. So sometimes it's really hard to find a story, particularly if you're doing residential work. So what I like to start with is going, okay, top level, we have the architect's description. Not very interesting. It's not really much of a story. So let's dig in a little deeper into that brief. Who was the client? Were they a doctor? Were they an elderly couple? Were they a family with young children? Did they have 6 dogs? Are they fly in, fly out workers and they're gone 3 months and then they're back for a week? What is peculiar or interesting or somewhat differentiated about the lifestyle of the client? It doesn't mean that they have to be, off joining the circus 11 months out of the year. They don't have to be wildly different, but what's remarkable or demographically interesting about them or psychologically interesting about them? Because then we can take it to the next level. Okay, they're an elderly couple. So this is about a couple that's downsizing. So our design is thoughtful about them feeling connected to their community, not feeling isolated, having a place that's fun that will make the grandkids come over more often. So I'm starting to think about the emotional aspects of the project and what is emotionally resonating about the project so that the audience has something to connect with, or at the very least, the audience who is in a similar position to your client, as far as their life stage, are able to relate to that project and say, oh, this is a project that has ideas about the kind of house that a person like me could live in. So they don't really get that from the headline. Typically, an architecture reader doesn't understand who the project's for from the headline. But if your firm is not particularly well known, you're not going to draw a crowd just by turning up and dropping a project. You're not Kanye West dropping a new album. You're trying to sort of sneak your way into developing an audience. I like to think that you start by going, what are audiences going to like to read about? And a lot of the time that's going to be about a project that's for somebody like them. The next step is to make it easy for journalists. When you're putting together your project information, use Bowerbird or build a media kit and make it really simple so that you're not just dropping your project description, you've also got all the details about the project, what products were in it. Answer particular questions like, what was the brief? What were the challenges? What are the lessons of this project? How does it relate to its context? Try to create yourself a little bit of a round table of different questions that could possibly come up that the journalist could need to answer or would want to write about, and then pre-provide that information as much as you can. Try to go into as much detail and put it in a document that's organized and clean and easy to navigate, and it makes it really, really easy for journalists to come along and just copy paste the information they need, or at the very least to be able to just reference it clearly and get straight to the point, so that they can easily find and navigate the information of the project without having to speak to you. Journalists are humans too, right? Like, they're not looking to work that hard to do their job. They want to get a good story without having to dedicate a whole week to it. They want to cut straight to the chase too. So make it as easy for them as possible. And step number 5 is follow up. If you use Bowerbird, you can see which journalists have downloaded your Bower kits. But if you're just using good old-fashioned email, you could use a mail tracking software like YesMail or MailTrack, and that will help you tell who's actually opened your email and hasn't responded to you, or who's downloaded the PDF, or who's downloaded the Dropbox file. And if you're seeing that somebody's downloading the photos or they're engaging with the email over and over again over the course of a week, shoot them an email. If they haven't got back to you yet, but they're still active and they're still engaging with that email, send them an email and just be like, hey, how's it going? Do you have any questions? I'm here if there's anything that you would like to clear up or any information you'd like from me. Or, hey, here's a few more photos we found that we didn't put in the media kit. Just something to keep the ball rolling. There's nothing wrong with following up. I mean, going back to the point about journalists being humans, they also get distracted. They also get, they're in the middle of something and they get a bunch of emails and then they don't come back to where they were, right? So they could be working on your project or thinking about doing an article. They could just be thinking it over. Then one thing leads to another and they end up dropping the ball. We all do that. A reminder or a little bit of a follow-up, I think, can a lot of the time drive some extra results. I've certainly seen clients following up with journalists after maybe a week or maybe a few days, and they get pretty good response rate. Usually it's along the lines of, oh, I'm really sorry, I was just looking at this project and then something happened at work, or we had a deadline or something got in the way, but thank you for sending me this email, bringing it back to my attention. I'm going to look at it today or run it past the editor. Stuff like that happens all the time. If you just do a little bit of follow-up every now and then, every time you have a new project over the course of a year or over 2 to 3 years, I think it could make a real difference. So those are the 5 steps. Just to summarize: do a great design, have a great photographer, invest in a little bit of staging. Pick more than one publication, look outside the design niche, and think about how you can broaden out your selection so that you're not pinning all of your hopes on whatever the most popular magazine or website is. The next thing is think a little bit deeper about your project and think about how you could focus on the clients or focus on some interesting aspect of the story or some interesting feature of the project, because you're trying to think about how people are going to click on that article and get traffic to help out your friends in the publishing world. Now, the next one is make it easy for journalists. Put together a media kit or a Bower kit. Make it easy to search, easy to navigate, easy to understand, easy to copy paste, all the loose ends tied so that a journalist can do their job as quickly and efficiently as possible. And finally, follow up. If you're just getting dead air from journalists, but you can see that they're still reading your media kit, they're still downloading your photos, still opening your email, shoot them a polite follow-up email to just get them back in the loop and get them talking to you again. And that's it. I'm Dave Sharp from Vanity Projects. Hopefully you found some of the ideas that I'm playing with in my practice useful for yours. Thanks.